Hello, and welcome to the Creative Academy. We are doing what we're now calling the red pencil, which is our way of sort of separating out when we're talking about query letters versus blue pencil when we're talking about pages. So I'm Eileen Cook, and I have my two colleagues with me here today. I have Crystal and Donna. Welcome, ladies. And we're going to talk about some queries. And one thing I want to mention is that queries are a little bit interesting because they're definitely subjective. So you're going to hear probably different thoughts from the three of us, but be aware that different agents are also going to have different opinions. So saying, well, I heard Agent X said that they hate this certain thing that you said you loved. I can definitely point you towards an agent that would say they love it and someone else who says they hate it. So when in doubt, please make sure you're reading the agent's guidelines on their website, as they often will give you some hints about what they're looking for. So with no further delay, I'm going to have, actually, since they're one pages, Crystal read us out our very first query.
All right. Okay. Dear personalization here, I would add in whatever is relevant to each agent here. Thank you for your interest in my query for The Magic Within, an 87,000-word YA story featuring magical realism. Anna Samuels, a brilliant and introverted 15-year-old albino, has spent her life trying to be as invisible as her eyelashes. All she needs to be happy is her music, books, and BFF Clara. Then she moves to a new town and everything changes. Falling for James, a musically gifted deaf boy, is a huge surprise, but it's small potatoes compared to the discovery of an enchanted violin in her attic, the same violin she dreamed about before she moved. An obscure note promises, whoever survives the violin's magic long enough to play will find what they're seeking. Only Anna can sense the magic, but she's convinced playing will mean finally pleasing her impossible-to-please mom and ending the incessant bullying that plagues her. For a gifted violinist, playing the violin should be easy. Unfortunately, even a 10-second touch releases blue flames and electric shocks powerful enough to send her flying. After countless painful attempts, Anna gives up, but the violin has other plans. It refuses to let her go, delivering horrible side effects relieved only by another touch. Caught in an endless loop of trying and failing, Anna's growing obsession alienates Clara and James, sends her grades into a nosedive, and threatens her grasp on reality. With her life unraveling and no idea how to fix it, Anna discovers the violin's offer is about to expire. She's forced to question not only what she's willing to risk for an ambiguous gift that may exist only in her mind, but what she truly needs to be happy. Fans of the Red Violin will appreciate this story that combines the magic of I'll Give You the Sun and Cloud Wish with the romance of Eleanor and Park's unconventional protagonists. My short stories and narrative nonfiction pieces are published in online and print literary journals, magazines, and anthologies, as well as Chicken Soup for the Soul. I've won several awards in Writer's Digest annual competitions, including a first place in the genre category, as well as several firsts in flash fiction contests. And like Anna, I play the fiddle, but mine has yet to shoot out any blue flames. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. Then there's signature, website, Instagram, Twitter, and email links. Yeah, and one more acronym, which I don't know what it is, so we'll get to that when we look at the evaluation.
That sounds good. So let's dive in. And I'm actually going to start at the very bottom, where I just think that Leslie does something that I want to pass on to other people as a good idea. So in addition to listing her website, she's listed her handle on Twitter and so forth. And so she's providing a couple of different ways for the agent to get in touch with her. The reason I'm highlighting this is I have seen before where agents are ending up in someone's spam. And so they're emailing someone back and they're not hearing. So they're saying, I love this book. I want to send me more. And they're not being able to reach that person. Or sometimes people shut down one email and they forget that they had sent a query, because sometimes agents take forever to get back to us on things. So having multiple ways that the agent can reach you means you're leaving things open for them if they need to find you. And if for some reason your email or your standard one isn't working. So I just want to give a tip of the hat to Leslie for doing that. And also then a small little warning that if you are putting on things like your Twitter handle or Facebook or things like that, make sure that you're conducting yourself in a professional manner on those sites, because people can easily find you. So if you're putting up there like, oh, I hated this agent, they said the worst thing, that's not usually a very good idea. So for you two ladies, were there any comments on the query in particular, things that worked for you or things that maybe you got a little confused or bumped on?
Before we go to there, I just had a couple comments on the bottom part. I clicked on the links, nicely done. The only thing is the Twitter link doesn't go to the right place. So after you've made your links, make sure that you go back and not only you check them, but have somebody else who's not you check them, and just make sure that it works from outside your computer as well as it works from inside your computer. Because if I was interested enough to click, I was curious where it was going to take me, but when I got there, it was not what I was expecting to get. And so that's just a bit of a lost opportunity. But yeah, definitely good having them in there.
And I didn't know what SBWI was.
It might be SCBWI, like Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. If it's just mentioning of affiliations, then that's a possibility. But I would say if you're going to link the stuff in your footer, link all the stuff in your footer. Like if you have a profile on SCBWI, make sure it's clear that that's what it is, and then actually include a link. Same with the Instagram. You might as well, if you're going to link some of them, just link all of them. And make sure that that's a conscious decision to actually add the link, not just let Word link it for you, because sometimes Word has ideas about what things should do, and that's not what we want.
Word has all the ideas.
Otherwise, I first wanted to just say that I think this is a very strong query in terms of including all of the right parts. You've got an introductory piece that immediately states exactly what the word count is and what type of story it is. You start with your character, which is nice and strong to get people drawn in and interested in what's going on there. And then there's some plot elements, and then some complications. I also think that the piece about comparing it to other books is really helpful in terms of what fans of other things might be interested in your work, is helpful to place it in the market. And good to highlight the qualifications that you have or any awards that you've received. So I just want to say first, overall, I think it's a really, really solid job on putting it together. The first thing I kind of bumped on was, unless this is a submission in a request, like as a result of a request that they've made, you start off by thanking them for their interest in your query, but it's not quite, I feel like it's not quite time for that yet. And it might be my personal response only, but thank you for taking the time to consider my query or whatever. Thanking people is good, but they haven't yet said they're interested. And so I get you want to set them up with a positive frame of mind, and that, that can be a good technique. But in this case, it feels like, did I miss a step? Like, is this something I've requested already? Or if you're following it from a conference, then that's totally valid. But if you haven't actually had an interaction with them before, then just make sure you're not causing them to question whether or not this is actually the first time you've come across their desk.
And if they have asked for pages, I guess you just change it to thanks for your interest in my first 20 pages or whatever it would be, instead of the query, because they're not really interested in the query, they're interested in the pages that follow, right?
Right. So query versus cover letter versus synopsis are kind of three pretty different things, which we can maybe cover in a separate tutorial, so that's top of mind for everybody.
And if someone has requested, so for example, if this is someone that you talked to at a conference and they said, yeah, that sounds really interesting, send me your query, I would nudge them, like, I met you at the Surrey International Writers Conference. And that's just because they may be going to multiple conferences. So if you can help place them, that will help them.
Right. Which Leslie does, just to be clear. She says, I would add whatever's relevant to the age. So for everyone else, that's a great place to start. Yeah. I want to just start by acknowledging that this query got me from the very first sentence, which is the description of the main character, Anna Samuel's brilliant, introverted 15-year-old albino trying to be as invisible as her eyelashes. I was thinking that line is going to stick with me. I love it. anyway. And then what it did for me is it set me up expecting Leslie has got a really great way with drawing metaphors or analogies or similes, or I think that's a simile. And then what happened was I bumped on small potatoes because I thought, wait a minute, small potatoes it's not as connected. And that's a very picky thing for me. James is musically gifted deaf boy, but it's small potatoes to the discovery of the enchanted violin in her attic. And I guess part of me, it stopped me because I thought, oh, you did such a beautiful job with the eyelashes, and now I want this one to be connected to music somehow. And that's a really picky, but there you are. That's me.
Well, and I think we're being picky because I'm going to comment and say, like, on the whole, I think if Leslie sent out this query, she'd be fine. We're kind of just picking little tiny things because I think what I wanted to highlight was a little similar to what Crystal's saying, but I want to, again, give kudos to it, is we're opening with the character. So you're telling me who she is, then you're telling me the problem, and then you're telling me the stakes. And those are the critical things that you need. In addition, when she does give the comparisons at the end, where she's saying fans of these books will appreciate this part of it. Part of what I like is she could have just said, fans of The Red Lion, I'll Give You the Sun, Cloud Wish, and Eleanor and Park will enjoy this book, which is not necessarily bad. But because she says things like people who like the romance of Eleanor and Park's unconventional protagonist, she's telling me how and why these comparables are related to her book. So that's really, so if you're saying, like, readers who love the magic of A, B, and C and so will love my book, that tells me why it's a comparable. I am just going to put in a note for everybody else who has this heart attack. You do not have to have comparables. I think they are really helpful. It can help sort of place an agent in, the genre and the kind of thing that you're trying to do. But if it's causing you great angst and woe, and also keep an eye on agent requests, some of them say they actually dislike comparables. So in which case, just strip that out. So if anything, if she's looking to shorten this query, that's the one paragraph I would probably in some ways let go, because I think the story stands quite well on its own. Mm-hmm. Then if I'm going to be nitpicky, and that's what we're doing here, is she has a line that says an obscure note promises, and then she has the line, because there's been so much talking about music and enchanted violins, when it first said an obscure note, I was thinking musical note. Mm-hmm. So I would change that to an obscure written note promises, or a note that comes in the mail promises. Something just, and again, we are talking, nitpicky. But that is where I would probably add that little bit there.
Yeah. One other thing that I think is interesting at the very end in the closing part, where it says, and like Anna, I play the fiddle, but mine has yet to shoot out any blue flames. I thought that was a really great way of establishing yourself as someone who actually knows about the topic that you're writing about, because, with something as integral to the whole thing as the music is in this case, it's intimidating if that's not your area of specialty, and that can be a bit of a trigger for somebody who is looking at this thinking, okay, will this be done well? But you don't want to say, I have played the violin for 14 years, so I know all about music. This was just a really good way of bringing that in a very subtle way that brings the point home, but it's not in your face, and it's not using up unnecessary words. It communicates more than just what it's trying to communicate. There's a little bit of humor. There's a little bit of sort of acknowledgement that, yeah, we're playing in the fantasy world, but I understand the reality of it as well. So I just thought that was really, really cleverly done.
But also it's just a little bit cheeky and funny, which I think, kind of going on what Donna said at the very start, the line about the eyelashes gives us a sense of voice and the kind of writing that we might see. That's another way to do it. The only other thing that I'm going to add in this one, again, is not feedback for Leslie, but it's feedback for other people. Leslie has a great bio, and she's won a lot of awards. And I'm suddenly picturing people in their office listening to this and being like, I've never won a Writer's Digest award. I've never been published anywhere. If you are writing fiction, you don't have to have it. It's great if you do. Like, I do think this strengthens Leslie's query. It tells me she knows how to write, that she's been recognized for her writing. But if you haven't done that, it's okay. I did not have any of these great things in my bio when I was initially querying because I hadn't really been published anyplace. So you're just going to put a little line about yourself and then get out of there. So if Leslie had no other writing experience, I would have her say something like Anna, I play the fiddle, but mine has yet to shoot any blue flames, you know, blah, blah, like a just short, sweet, and get out. Don't waste words because queries are short on things that are not delivering information. So the fact you're a mother of 3, live in a small town. So Leslie's done nicely with that. Any other suggestions for Leslie? Otherwise, I'm thinking she's ready to start sending.
I support that entirely. I clicked on your website link. We're going to talk about that in office hours. Because I found all kinds of blank pages. I'm sure you're just building it still, which is partly why. But yeah, come on out and we'll chat about that specifically.
I have one thing,
Yes.
which when we get to the very end, actually, I guess two. The word "unfortunately" stopped me, and I know no one else can read this, but it was one of those little things that it. Unfortunately, even a 10-second touch releases blue flames. Again, it was one of those words where you were flowing so nicely with a gifted violinist playing a violin should be easy. And then the unfortunately felt like two, and it's just the way I was reading. But then there was this other piece. The last one was for an unambiguous gift that may exist only in her mind, opened up a whole bunch of questions. Is this happening to her or is it not? And I don't know how you deal with that, Eileen or Crystal. I put it in brackets thinking it just makes me question something. And is that a good thing to be questioning? Will it make the agent want to go and say, is this actually happening to her or is she losing her mind? Or is that just confusing? So it's really a question for you. Do you want a query to be raising a question that doesn't at all get answered? I mean, I know you do, but
Sometimes you do. It depends. I mean, if they've requested a very specific synopsis to be included, you don't want to hold anything back. Like, you don't want to be burying your lead or, sitting on the biggest reveal. I think if it turns out that all of this is just in her head, then that's probably not the line, or this probably isn't quite the query you want to have. But if it, I don't know.
Magical realism to me means there is actually going to be magic. But when you say it may exist only in her mind, it makes me think she's a teenager who's just like gone a bit loopy. So that's not. Yeah.
I have unfair information because I've seen more of this manuscript. So, I mean, I can sort of unfairly, I can jump ahead and say there is magic that is happening in this book, but the character does go through a period of time where she wonders if this is in her head.
So maybe that's what it needs is, she won that because anyway, or maybe not.
So
or maybe,
if that's the case, then I think this is strong. Like because that's where the conflict is. And so one of the things you want to see are where are the potential sources of conflict in this story. And so highlighting the fact that it may or may not be real and that she is struggling with that's what I'm highlighting missing. Conflict. So
that's the piece that it was.
Okay.
Yeah, you see what I mean? Like it left me thinking this is a different kind of story than what I was expecting. And there you go. I'm
all right.
When we're get down to this kind of nitpicky, you're in a good thing. And what I can tell you is there will be an agent who will bump on it and not like it, and there'll be another agent who loves it that's a little bit ambiguous.
Yeah.
So I think at some point you go with, do I love it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that I would be. All right. Well, huge thank you to Leslie. Start sending those queries out. And if any of you have a query that you're working on, make sure that you click on the red pencil submission form and we'll take a look. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.